What would the world be without some technical glitches? Hi, everyone in all of the countries. It's wonderful hearing from you. And I've got Chocolate, one half of my cat team. Fluffy is actually on the floor and is acting like he would like to be up here, but not quite enough. So he's circling. He'll probably jump up on the table in front of me. And I want to thank everybody. We broke through 174,000 subscribers this week. So let's keep going and break through 175,000 before our June 23rd summer solstice celebration. Everyone, everywhere, thank you so much. And I really look forward to seeing your recorded questions for the June 23rd summer solstice broadcast. Please send your recordings. Ian is organizing for Brad to edit for the June 23rd celebration. And by then, another event that we've all been waiting for should also occur, the end of the 180-day countdown to learn more U.S. government information about UFOs and UAPs from the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence. This past Sunday, May 16th, 60 Minutes reporter Bill Whitaker on CBS had an interview with a retired Navy pilot, Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who says he and his flight crews observed UFOs like this one off the Atlantic coast of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Quote, every day for at least a couple of years, beginning in 2015, they were seeing UFOs. Lieutenant Graves said that he and other members of his FA-18 fighter squadron continually watched UFO UAPs in restricted airspace southeast of Virginia Beach, Virginia. Lieutenant Graves said he is speaking out now because, quote, I am worried, frankly. You know, if these were tactical jets from another country that were hanging out up there, it would be a massive issue. But because the UAP UFOs look different, we're not willing to actually look at the problem in the face. We're happy to just ignore the fact that these are out there watching us every day. But I don't know what it is. Close quote. What Lieutenant Graves means by different looking is that unlike Earth-based aircraft with wings, the UFO UAPs can be many shapes, from round to discs, to spheres, to cylindrical, to triangular, to boomerang, to diamond-shaped, and on and on. Two other Navy pilots, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich on the left and Commander David Fravor on the right, who were in the same F-18 jet back in November of 2004 when Fravor was commander of the F-18 squadron. He was on the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. Commander Fravor and Lieutenant Dietrich were two of four Navy jet pilots who saw the UAP UFOs with their own eyes right below them, close to the roiling ocean water, seeming to mimic the F-18 movements, and in infrared. In addition to the USS Nimitz, another nearby ship, the USS Princeton, had new radar that picked up, quote, multiple anomalous vehicles, close quote, that were tracked descending from an altitude as high as 80,000 feet down to near the water in less than 1 second. Both Lieutenant Dietrich and Commander Fravor saw one of the white Tic Tac UAP UFOs disappear right in front of their plane. The craft did not speed off. It blinked out like turning off a light. Commander Fravor told 60 Minutes, quote, I don't know who is building it, who's got the technology, who's got the brains, but there's something out there that was better than our F-18 airplane, close quote. But no one in the Pentagon admits that the U.S. government has known since World War II that Foo Fighters and 90-degree turning discs were, in fact, advanced aerial craft operated by other intelligences and not made by humans. The UFO UAP aerial objects have been photographed and captured in radar and infrared since at least World War II. Here is one example of a mysterious UFO color photograph taken half a century ago on June 30th, 1973. The photograph takes up 2 pages, with the center binding of the paperback cracked open from age. The book is UFOs, Past, Present, and Future by Robert Emenegger and Alan Sandler, released in 1974. The photographer was a scientist on the supersonic French Concord studying a solar eclipse. At 55,000 feet altitude, the scientists photographed this reddish-orange glowing object categorized officially as an unidentified flying object, or UFO. Or years earlier, on June 16, 1969, Apollo 11 photographed this unidentified pale gray object. The NASA lab labeled it photo number AS11365319. And even earlier, on September 12, 1966, during a Gemini 11 flight, these very strange glowing objects were photographed from the Gemini. NASA's Photo Evaluation Lab labeled these images number S6654661. Here, the arrow points down to 2 pink-colored balls or unidentified spheres that were photographed beyond the Gemini 12 spacecraft on November 11, 1966. This photograph was taken 4 hours and 45 minutes after liftoff. NASA labeled this photo number S6663402. These pink balls, or spheres, were photographed during Skylab 3. That was the second manned Skylab flight on the 263rd day of its 1973 orbit. This was one of 4 images taken of the pink spheres near Skylab 3. NASA's Photo Evaluation Lab labeled them as, quote, unidentified object or satellite, close quote. Going back even further in time on Earth, there are many artworks in previous centuries that have had unidentified aerial craft in skies, often in religious paintings. Here, a disc-shaped object is shining beams of light down on John the Baptist and Jesus. This painting was produced in 1710 by Flemish artist Art de Gelder and is entitled The Baptism of Christ. It hangs in the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge, England. 300 years earlier, in 1487, this Madonna with Saint Giovannino was painted with what looks like a UFO radiating light in the background. How long have UAPs been interacting with Earth? I have often shared with you what the Defense Intelligence Agency analyst told me in December 1999 about his 23 years of monitoring and analyzing 3 different and competing non-human life forms that have been based on Earth for at least 270 million years, he said. Our government has proof, he told me. I asked, what proof? He said the subject was too dangerous for both him and for me. But he had read my books, and we also discussed information I included in my first book, An Alien Harvest, Further Evidence Linking Animal Mutilations and Human Abductions to Alien Life Forms. And in this big book, my first book, An Alien Harvest, I have a huge section. It's called Government Knowledge. And it has, going all the way back to when I did this in the early 80s, I had already top secret magic information that was coming to me. And in this book about Majestic 12, I had, in this big chapter, I described an alleged presidential briefing paper that I was shown by an AFOSI analyst at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque on April 9, 1983, in an office at the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. That briefing paper referenced different non-human tall beings. In fact, in that paper, the word T capitalized ALLS was used, as well as and small gray-skinned entities based on Earth deep underground, it said, in ET colonies, in quotes that I remember and had written down in a notebook. The briefing paper stated that different ETs have come at various intervals in the Earth's history to manipulate DNA in already existing terrestrial primates and other Earth life. The DIA analyst added that our government knew that ETs have manipulated DNA to create the dinosaurs that were on this planet from 240 million years ago until their extinction about 66 million years ago. And I asked him about one sentence in the Kirtland briefing that I had never forgotten. Quote, 2,000 years ago, extraterrestrial biological entities created a being to be placed on this earth to teach mankind about love and nonviolence, close quote. And I said back in that 1983 meeting, are we talking about Jesus Christ here? The AFOSI agent did not reply, but said that one of the extraterrestrial biological entities retrieved from a crashed disk communicated telepathically that, quote, our souls recycle. Reincarnation is real. It is the machinery of this universe, close quote. And now comes this new book, Jesus, A New Vision by Whitley Strieber. He has had a 1988 book, Communion, A True Story by Whitley Strieber, that was #1 in the New York Times and as a bestseller. And with this cover of a pointed chin gray alien that has been seen around the world and single-handedly has provoked thousands, millions of people to open up about their own abduction experiences with small and tall grays, tall blondes, tall red hairs, tall black hairs, tall reptilian humanoids, and tall praying mantis beings, to name only a few described by abductees. Whitley and I have talked about the briefing paper that I was shown at Kirtland Air Force Base back on April 9th of 1983. And that paper said, quote, these extraterrestrial biological entities created a being to be placed on this planet Earth to teach Homo sapien about love and nonviolence. Historic avatars have included Krishna, 5,000 years ago in northern India, 91 miles south of New Delhi. Buddha was born in Lumbini, Nepal, in the Himalaya Mountains at least 2,600 years ago. Christ was born 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. And his whole 5'7" body was wrapped from head to feet in this long linen cloth after he was taken down from the crucifixion cross. That linen has images of the front and back of a male body created by a brownish yellowing of the minute upper fibrils of the linen fibers. The shroud is now kept in the Royal Chapel of the Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista of Turin, Italy. It was not understood that the shroud had a positive image of a male body until 1898, when this attorney, an amateur photographer, Secunda Pia, took the first photographs of the shroud. When he was developing his photographic negatives, he noticed that the negative showed a positive image of the man's front and back body in the shroud much more clearly than the faint image on the linen appeared to human eyes. There were even blood marks on the shroud. Scientific evidence has increased since the 1980s, supporting the hypothesis that a unique and powerful energy had interacted for an instant with the linen shroud wrapped around Christ head to toe by his mother Mary, the Mary Magdalene, and perhaps Anna of the Essenes, after he was taken down from the agony on the cross. Whitley reports in chapter 12, The Resurrection in Reality, that, quote, the shroud linen was a form of cellulose that is made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen atoms that are bonded together in pairs, single bonded. Whatever created the shroud image caused breakages among these molecular bonds. The result was that the carbon and oxygen atoms then double bonded with each other. These trillions of double bonded atoms are what cause the dark tannish color of the image in the Shroud of Turin. Here now is author and producer of UnknownCountry.com, Whitley Strieber.
What happens in the tomb is this. The body of Jesus is laid in the shroud. The shroud is a herringbone weave linen cloth. Jesus is then wrapped in this, and rigor mortis sets in. We can see the effects of rigor mortis on the image in the shroud. And after presumably 3 days, something happens. An earthquake is recorded in the Gospels. It would have been violent enough to shake the ground nearby. The body turns into light and flashes out of the shroud. The shroud then drops down on itself. The reason we know that this happened this way is that the image is the image of the body as it would have been before or at the instant of its transformation. In other words, when the image was made, the shroud was wrapping something. But then, and only then, did the shroud apparently collapse on itself.
And there is also the blood. If I understand correctly, the blood on the shroud was decoupled from the body itself in such a way that there's no pulling away of the fibrils. They say this would be instantaneous dematerialization that separated the body that had been there from the blood and the linen.
That's correct. What happened to the blood is not fully understood. But the blood reached the surface of the shroud. Those are not drips. They are like a coherent image of the blood on the body. But here's the strangest thing about the blood. We know it's blood. We've tested it.
And it's AB negative.
Exactly. We know it's blood. The problem is this. If you take blood and drip it onto a piece of cloth, inside of a few months it's going to be dark brown.
Right.
Inside of a few years it's going to be completely black.
Right.
This blood is still red. Why? Because it was irradiated with neutrons. We know also from tests that have been conducted that when that happens, the blood does not degrade. Its coloration remains stable.
That intensity of the neutrons comes back to the dematerialization, or let's put another word on this, sublimation of a flesh matter body, a sublimation instantaneously into
something else. Yes, into to neutrons and protons, into radiation. He became radiant, a radiant being. You come away realizing that the resurrection happened. It happened. And therefore, we've really got to take this man's teachings seriously. Whatever it was made the body disappear completely. If the body hadn't disappeared completely, the condition of the shroud would not be as it is. If the body had continued to deteriorate in the shroud, there would be evidence of that. There is no evidence whatsoever that that body was in that shroud for more than a couple of days. It completely dematerialized. Whether or not this was done by something introduced into the tomb from the outside, or it was something that emerged out of the body itself, we don't know. There's no way to tell that.
It may have been connected to his soul.
Well, exactly. I think that's exactly right. I think that's what it was connected to.
And there is another huge piece that we can't ignore, and that is for probably millions of years, but in terms of the 20th and 21st century, publicly for the last century, we have had Homo sapiens sapien humans around this planet in both hemispheres reporting being taken up in beams of light. They have drawn discs and triangles and cylinders and ice cream cones and all kinds of craft that humans have not made. And in all of that, we have had professional, government-trained, controlled remote viewers who worked in Project Stargate for the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency. Those men have all concurred that when they did tasks to try to access other consciousness in the universe, they all got consciousness. And as Lynn Buchanan told me on the record, Linda, they are divided into friendlies, neutrals, and unfriendlies, and some are very hostile and would like to annihilate humans on Earth. Why, if there is a bell-shaped curve of friendlies, neutrals, hostiles, then how have the avatars of history, including Christ, emerged in this planet? In a context of so many confusing other intelligences with such strange and complex agendas?
I think the shortest answer is this. Somebody loves us, and somebody is trying to save us and to give us a life worth living. I think that's the bottom line. Obviously, somebody doesn't. And you go back to the Bible, and you see the stories of the fall, and you come to understand that it was arrogance that caused the dark angels to become too heavy to maintain their position in heaven, and they fell. And they are always falling, and they want to take us with them. It's not clear at all who is who.
One of the constant questions to me from everyone is, who has made the United States government lie? Has it been a policy of denial since World War II by the human factors only, or has there been something else at play? And Chaim Eshad, who was for 30 years head of the Space Directorate in Israel, who had a new book come out, he said, it's not the humans. It is the extraterrestrial biological entities that have not wanted humanity to know that they are here, that they are the ones dictating. What is your perspective after a life of interacting with these beings?
Some of them have the idea that if this happens, then they don't need to bother with us anymore. Let's just leave. Others want us to survive and are trying to find a balance where the mystery of who and what they really are continues, and at the same time, a conduit is opened for them to express their concerns about us and our future, and to galvanize action on the part of the whole human species, along with covert assistance behind the scenes to help us save our planet.
Why do you think at this point in 2021 that you have produced a new vision of Christ?
The reason I did this is I've learned a little bit about the dark side and a little bit about the good and a lot about why Jesus was here in the first place.
Explain that.
If you ally yourself with the good allies itself with you, and you are no longer accessible to the dark side. And Jesus, more than any other teacher who has ever appeared among us, laid out in his Beatitudes how to do it. And in his teaching, how do you address yourself to the good in such a way that you become part of it? And that's why I wrote this book, Jesus, A New Vision. People who have faith and are in religions don't really need this book. For them, it's an interesting book because it shows the whole trajectory of the development of the religion.
And the science of resurrection in sublimation to light.
Exactly. And it affirms what they have always wanted to believe is literally true. There was a resurrection, and we can prove it. After all, we are all only human. And if we're here for one thing, for sure, it's to be forgiven.
And I have talked with Whitley a great deal about this extraordinary book, Jesus, the New Vision. And you can see all of my pink marks, the sticky, that I go through books to help me organize what I want to do in interviews and to go back and track content. And I thought I would share with you the Beatitudes as Whitley listed the ones that he chose from the various books in which Christ talked about the beloved and this list that we know as the Beatitudes. And in fact, in Wikipedia, it goes into that there were 8 blessings recounted by Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, in the Gospel of Matthew, and 4 in the Sermon on the Plain in the Gospel of Luke. And often we hear, blessed are those blessed. Here is the list that Whitley Strieber put together. Beloved are the spiritual searchers, for they will be welcome in heaven. I hope that means all of us. Beloved are the sad, for they will be made cheerful. Beloved are the gentle but strong, for the earth is theirs. Beloved are those who search for peace, for they shall find it. Beloved are the compassionate, for they shall receive compassion. Beloved are those who do not hate, for God shall be their companion. Beloved are those who make peace, for they will be called the children of God. And beloved are the persecuted, for the dominion of heaven is open to them. And before I move on to questions, I wanted to give you a highlight about something new that is coming on, sort of provoked by the 180-day countdown to, let's hope, more honesty and truth about the UFO UAP presence on our Earth and in this solar system. And that is tomorrow night, Clubhouse, where you gather together like in a virtual living room. There is a new UFO, it's like a discussion group about all of the facets that you can think of, and it's being started by Alan Steinfeld in collaboration with Rodericks. And as I understand it, you can go to Clubhouse and see the program, and that this would be a brand new one starting tomorrow night, May 20th. And look for news about me attending, and Alan Steinfeld, who is the editor of the Making Contact book that we have talked about. He will be there, And as I understand it, each week there will be guests coming through trying to talk about the news as it is breaking, and going forward for the rest of this year and hopefully beyond, as more and more news seems to be coming from the UFO, UAP subjects. So with that, Ian, thank you for your patience standing by. I am very interested in what people's comments and questions are tonight.
That was a fascinating section that you broadcast there. It's great to hear from Whitley. I'm going to go straight into the super chats first of all before we forget those. So thank you everyone for contributing this evening, and thank you for the questions. Here we go. Moonbird.
Love Moonbird.
Moonbird was the first one, I think, as soon as we opened the chat. And Jenna McHugh was hot on Moonbird's heels. So thank you, Jenna, as well. Barry Marlowe, James Thiessen, Len Beeler, Peace Party, Barber 0611, Melody Meisner, Jeffrey Rizzo, Crystal and Katz, and I'm sorry, I could stop taking the names after that. If I catch up with anybody else, I'll add them next week. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your creativity, for your generosity, and for the fact that we are sharing our own virtual kind of human love fest in coming together, and the group continuing to keep growing, which is my hope, as we are now clearly getting into a new paradigm shift on this planet. I don't think there's any question about it. We are headed toward maybe finally the biggest truth. We're not alone in this universe. And after that are 1,000 million discussions. So Ian, fly away with the first question.
Well, first of all, I wanted to reference the Shroud of Turin and say, you know, it's such an inspiration. That's so good to hear that Willie is putting that out in the book. And I remember when you and I at least had the opportunity of looking at a full-size replica of the Shroud of Turin.
Yes.
It really is an amazing phenomenon.
That entire wall. And it was taking the Pia photograph and making it, 10 feet high. And it was so extraordinary that I have found my mind thinking back at the Shroud of Turin in that huge photograph that we saw in England quite often. And it is almost as if it has come alive in that large, large format.
That was an amazing experience. One of the comments here is that the Shroud of Turin is a three-dimensional negative.
Yes, and I have read about it. It is a little complex, and I tried tonight to go into the importance of what Whitley is focusing on. And I think that at some point it would be wonderful if I could find a physicist who would go into this new world where you get into 3D negatives and some of these astonishing, sort of almost like they're human. And that is a whole new development. But has it been applied in full yet to the Shroud? I don't think so, because the Catholic Church controls that so strictly in Turin. Ian.
Yeah, Linda, sorry, moving on from that, you asked the question in your section there about what was it that has made the US government in particular cover up the UFO phenomena. And the question is, did Eisenhower sign a Treaty of Greda?
My personal opinion is yes. He did not go to a dentist. I personally think that where he went was Edwards Air Force Base, based on information that I have. Others think maybe he was taken to Area 51 or to yet another underground facility. I think he was taken to Edwards Air Force Base and done so very secretly. there has been contradictions from various people about which type of non-human that he met with. I personally, again, this is a personal opinion based on discussions, but without absolute proof. I think it was a Nordic. I think it was a Nordic humanoid that he had a discussion with. And some of the backstory that has been emerging out of the last couple of years, a lot of work that Paul Blake Smith in Missouri has done, working on a book about exactly that, a meeting between President Dwight D. Eisenhower and a non-human. And he's the one who did the 1941 Missouri, Cape Girardeau, Missouri book that is excellent and I think is full of facts. Apparently, getting actual verification, time, people that would talk when it comes to Eisenhower meeting a non-human has really been a well-kept secret. But it was only in the last couple of years that I talked with somebody who is not a journalist, but is a person who has worked in military capacity and is now in their 70s. And they had a particular role in that Palm Springs area. And what they told me was that there was some rumor that what Eisenhower wanted more than anything was to strike some kind of like a treaty that might affect reducing the number of animal mutilations, the number of human abductions, that those were specific subjects that were addressed, even though the government hides or tries to hide those, and that the trade-off had something to do with territory on this planet, technological collaboration. And the problem is that we need firsthand, provable documents, all of it. But I do think that there is enough circumstantial evidence from people that I've talked to, and some of the photographs when the president was in Palm Springs, and some of the people that he met with in and around that time when the phony Dennis story was leaked or put out. There is other information that contradicts that. So to me, looking back through the lens of the many decades, it is so common for this to be the way the government has operated in all kinds of cover-ups that cover up something that is really going on concerning non-humans, but they have 4 or 5 or 6 different cover stories, and to get to the truth of what really happened is very difficult journalistically. But anybody out there listening who may have firsthand information, please get back in touch with me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com to set up perhaps a phone connection, or you can communicate with me by hard mail. I know that there are people still, even from that time long ago, who probably do have friends or family or somebody, and it would be very interesting to hear from somebody who might have other information. So, Ian, what's next?
Okay, the next question is off the back of that one. It says, do you think that presidents know things now?
Oh, gosh, yes. Yeah, I think every president has had some kind of a briefing, not all the same. The one story that I have heard directly from somebody I know who works in Washington and was echoed at a conference by somebody else telling a very similar story was that the briefing paper that I was shown at Kirtland Air Force Base was in fact similar to or identical to the briefing paper shown to President Jimmy Carter. And the sentence that I remember from long ago when I was told this is that Jimmy Carter cried for a half hour after reading the briefing paper. Now, that might be a natural reaction because of his particular relationship with the church and religion as he had been brought up. I personally am not upset by looking at the avatars of history as being other intelligences who have wanted to help the struggling Homo sapien and maybe even Neanderthalensis to be able to stand up and have lives worth living on this planet at a time when the standing up humanoid primates may have the disconnect between what they were capable of understanding and the non-humans who put the genetic manipulation into evolution, who watch and monitor, that I'm not myself. I'm not upset by considering that Christ and other avatars of history may have come from another galaxy, another dimension, whatever is the huge faceted aspect and truth of this universe and multiple universes. But I can also understand that interacting with the whole population of the earth about truths that contradict centuries of books and rituals, that might be hard for some people. And that might be one of the reasons why the government has had policies of lies and denial since World War II. But somehow we Homo sapiens sapien have to grow up. And growing up, from my point of view, is to know everything, good, bad, and in between, about the planet we're on, the solar system we're in, what really is happening throughout the Milky Way galaxy and far beyond. So, Jimmy Carter was one of the presidents who was affected. I think they've all had different pieces of this story. And the one I think got a lot of real facts was Ronald Reagan at Camp David within March after he became president in January 1981. And he was with several intel people who clearly some have been assigned to what types of aliens, which ones were considered friendly or neutral, and which ones were considered hostile. And a lot of information was given to Ronald Reagan, and his reaction, according to the transcript, was, well, should we be having meetings about this? It wasn't backing off. It was, you could hear his voice. You could imagine Ronald Reagan, should we be having meetings about this? And being calmed by his intel support, saying, sir, we have contingency plans for everything. And it's those contingency plans for everything that I guess are in the SAPs that nobody can get to, and so much is hidden in. But hopefully June of 2021, there will be a crack in that ceiling, and that we will at least get the beginnings, if not the whole sentence. We're not alone in this universe. There are consciousnesses everywhere, some friendly, some neutral, some hostile. And you and I and every standing up Homo sapien sapien on planet Earth deserve to know the whole truth. I believe that to the core of my soul. I don't think we'll be healthy on this planet until that occurs. So I welcome your point of view. And Ian, what about another question?
Just to reiterate what you just said there, one of the comments here is ET are like us. They could be benevolent, malevolent, or benign.
Yes, as above, so below. That we humans, we must reflect something about the genetic manipulators. We must be a reflection of what made us, and what made the dinosaurs, and what took out the dinosaurs. The one thing that if I could say tonight to every single person, no matter what news, no matter what else happens, if you learn to have sensitivity to pressure in, for me, it's my chest, that you know it is your soul, and that you know that even the non-humans have told American military, reincarnation, the recycling of souls, it is true. It goes on and on and on. And for some reason, we are in consciousness that is one cycle that exists on this planet, and trillions of other cycles of creation and recreation. And remember, I told you someday I ought to edit and play back for you on this YouTube channel at least some of the excerpts from Roger Penrose when I talked to him 2 years ago at the fall of 2018. And I have one of his books called The Cycles of Time. It has a lot of equations in it, but it also has a lot of profound perception. And when he came on the line after the secretary, when I had placed the call to do the interview, and I began with where I thought I was sort of connecting with him about the possibility of universes coming to ends, collapsing, coming back out, or could they black holes play a role, all of that. I asked him a question having to do with the cycles of universes and our so-called the beginning, the Big Bang. And he came in with this lovely, soft, wonderful voice. No, 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 no. There's no ending. There's really no beginning. It is cycles and cycles and cycles into infinity. And that's how the phone call started. I said, hang on, hang on. Wow. And it was wonderful. It was delightful. And it was me really asking questions and listening to a mind that was grasping something that we have been denied. Grasping something about the nature of our universe being one of cycles in infinity. Grasping that his mind and others like David Bohm perceive that we are in a universe that is quite different than college physics textbooks. And that we're coming into some part of the 21st century. We're beginning finally to penetrate what the real truths are, which might be we're in a holographic universe, and it may have been perpetuated in cycles and cycles. Everything is different than what we have been taught, and yet what we have been taught has got us to this place, this moment in a huge timeline where we may finally be treated with enough respect to be told as conscious souls. There are infinite numbers of other beings. And I find it exciting, not terrifying. And I hope you do too. Okay, Ian, what else?
Well, you already answered the last question, the next question that I had just there, because it was there. The real question is, to what end is this all there is to it, that the cycle of births and rebirths continues till the soul attains the degree of refinement necessary to attain or nirvana, and what after that? But I think that you've answered that already, so thank you, Linda. So we're moving on now to...
Well, let me make one comment
sure.
on, because that the writer, and it is so important, because part of humanness is to say, well, if it's infinite and it goes on forever and it cycles, then what are we getting out of it, right? There's something about humanity, build and barter system and all of that. There's got to be a payoff kind of thing. And it was just this past weekend. I have two beautiful, they are occipiters in the bird category, and my brother and Brad and I still don't know exactly which kind of hawk or occipiter they are, but they're beautiful. And they have built a nest only about probably 75, 100 feet from the wall of my backyard. And it's up in a big, beautiful Japanese elm, and the beautiful birds, they're here all the time now. I'm living with these wild, wonderful, gorgeous birds. And they picked a place in the center of the tree, and so you can see where they built the nest. And sometime soon we're going to be treated to them coming and going until their baby hawks get big enough to get out of that nest. And I found myself watching them this weekend, just quiet, watching as one of them would move to another tree and go into the bark and clearly eating something I couldn't see, but really pulling that bark apart. The other bird is bigger and flies off with these gorgeous wings. And then the two will come back to where the nest is. And I thought, once upon a time when I was in high school, I read some book, and it was all about God having a discussion with humans. And the part that came back to my mind this past weekend that is so relevant to Roger Penrose and all of it, the book is saying to humans, I never expected for you to want to do anything except be happy. Be happy chopping wood. Be happy carrying water. Be happy climbing a mountain. And at some level, it was like reducing all of the angst, all of the competition, all of everything that goes on between 8 billion people on planet Earth to what if there was no competition? Do humans need competition to be happy? Is it possible, like the birds? You could say they have short lives, but they go through the same cycles with beauty and grace, and always in a relationship with what is around them. And that part of what seems to be the disconnect now between humans and Earth, and maybe moving out into the solar system, is we don't seem to be able to evolve in balance with nature. And until we learn how to do that, we may be in perpetual existential jeopardy. And maybe there have been non-humans very concerned, wanting us to make it, wanting us to evolve past self-destruction. They must have had alarm bells going off in 1945 with the 3 atomic bombs. And that child's book, God saying to these humans, I never wanted anything more except for you to be happy. Chopping wood, carrying water. Well, how do we find a way to balance now with each other and with this planet, with the peaceful happiness of doing something we really want to do and being able to evolve and live with food and water and all of the things now that the current civilization needs without destroying the very Earth spaceship that we're on? And will Mars be the release valve, the backup, with a lot of problems there? There's something about coming into seeing our Earth, we humans, through this lens with non-humans that aren't necessarily scary if we knew what their full and real intent were. And maybe if we could have dialogue, maybe humans would get past this big, huge challenge with our own Earth's climate and start moving out into our solar system in balance with the universe that recycles and recycles and recycles through time and infinity. Okay, what about one more, Ian?
Hey, leading up to possible disclosure, we are asked, do you think Linda would agree that Lou Elizondo's assessment that the government is in possession of exotic material?
Absolutely. I've been in possession of the bismuth, magnesium, zinc that Lou Elizondo and those guys at TTSA purchased from me. So yes, I have spent 19 years or so working on with a lot of people on that bismuth, magnesium, zinc, and understand it is a skin that goes on the outside of, at least I was told it was a wedge-shaped craft, not round, and that the inner skin is aluminum with iridium in it, and that if you know what you're doing with those atomically, the atoms and the molecules are intelligently engineered and designed in the bismuth, magnesium, zinc. And the iridium is also atomically molecular placed in the aluminum. And that if you have those two skins in parallel with other technological abilities, you neutralize gravity. And if you neutralize gravity, you can go at, what is it that Lou Elizondo says, 600 Gs, and the UFOs have been tracked on radar, 600 Gs, doing multiple 90 degrees, and that means they canceled out inertial force. And we can't do that. We don't know how to do that. A human would be an oil pool on the floor of something that was going 600 Gs and did a 90-degree turn. So what can we possibly learn, maybe, from those, whatever they are, that they don't seem to be attacking us, but they're certainly in our skies, in our water, underground, in the moon, throughout the solar system. They're watching every single thing that we do. That's what I come away with from everything, from animal mutilations to human abductions, to government efforts to back engineer. All of those layers have reports of various types of craft, sometimes beings, but the feeling is we have been monitored since Homo erectus stood up 2 million years ago. We have been monitored since the dinosaurs were some experiment and they were alive for 170 million years, and then they were either deliberately taken out or some catastrophe happened. And if you then put it all in the box of what the gray being told the Air Force captain at Los Alamos, is my understanding, in the end of the 40s. Reincarnation, the recycling of souls, is the machinery of this universe. Through that lens, the resurrection of Christ, past lives, what happens at the moment of death, for real? Are there intelligences like the praying mantises that are made, are cyborgs, and they are made to oversee solar system development projects that can last for 10 billion years? 10 billion year old AI, 80-year-old Homo sapien. On the scale, what it says to me and what I keep feeling coming through myself more and more, because I love life, I love exploring, I love trying to get to the bottom of mysteries, I love to get up in the morning and read the New York Times. I really love absorbing life. But I also understand that question. If we're in a holographic universe, and Roger Penrose is correct, and everything cycles and cycles through infinity, including our souls, gathering information, more and more layers of information, contributing back to the divine field. Is it legitimate to say, why? Or is a better word, let's go for it. Let's try to understand who we are in relationship to all of these other consciousnesses, who are hostile, who are friendly, who are neutral. Expand out, and that in the expansion, it almost comes back to that school book of the God talking to the humans. I only wanted you to be happy chopping wood. Well, the layers and levels of the chopping wood keep expanding, I'm sure, through infinity. And in a strange way, sort of like Roger Penrose, no singularity, not really a big bang, just cycles that keep on cycling and recycling. Well, when you get with that and you think, wow, what I learned this time, and the next cycle, will I remember any of this? Well, to me, it would be the most exciting thing in the world to be waking up on another planet and then remembering life here. And that may be part of the challenge in this particular universe that might be a hologram put in motion by very advanced intelligences, and we're in it. This is the black box we're in. But at the other side of the hologram, it may be a kind of graduation that if we knew the truth, we would say, let's go for it. And that's the way I like to try to live, and not fighting, and going for real facts, real truth, real fun, real love, and always, always in the light. Keep breathing in the light. It does help. I love you guys. I'll see you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate.
And I don't have to put them in
Select a language,
bind them anywhere. They love
and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.